We want to clean in the paint. We're going to call hand checking and body checking, and sportsmanship is an absolute must. Okay.
He lets it fly.
Welcome into our very first episode of Two Shots in the Ball podcast. I am your co-host, Mike McAndrews, along with my brother, Jim McAndrews. And Jim, I think we should back up just a little bit from last week where we kind of explained who we were, but we never really gave much time to the name of the podcast for those that don't know what Two Shots in the Ball actually means. So for those that don't know, two shots in the ball is typically what happens after a player or a coach gets a technical foul. Jim's been known to hand those out like Tic Tacs from time to time, and I have been known to maybe get one or two in my career.
That's much more believable.
Yeah, so that's kind of how we came up with the name Two Shots in the Ball. Our very first guest, and the next guy I'm going to introduce, may or may not have gotten a technical or two in his coaching career. Jim and I are both excited to have this guy on as our very first guest. He has coached 11 Catholic League championships, including a league record 7 in a row, 13 district titles, 6 regional titles, 4 Final Fours, a state champion, Catholic League Hall of Fame class of 2023, one of the all-time greats in the state of Michigan, a good coaching friend of mine. Not quite sure how he feels about Jim, since Jim has officiated a number of his games. But we are excited to welcome Coach Pat Donnelly from UAD Jesuit as our very first guest on Two Shots in the Ball. Pat, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Good Irish Catholic for our first guest. Thank you. Yeah. Pat, Mike, I saw in the news, actually, Coach is no longer coaching. So how long were you coaching, the head coach at?
I was at UAD for 17 years.
17 years.
But I just finished my 38th year of coaching.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about, what went into that decision and what was behind taking the time to step down and become the full-time AD?
Yeah, well, sorry.
Go ahead. Good.
But this year, I was working in admissions, and Mike and I know each other well through the admissions process in Catholic high school lore. But this year, I stepped away from admissions, and I was the interim AD. So I was doing both that and coaching basketball. That's a lot of time between the two of them, and quite honestly, it was in my mind to thinking about when I was going to step away from coaching. It kind of helped that they said, hey, we want to lift the interim tag and you become the full-time AD. That kind of helped with my decision to say, hey, I'm going to step away from coaching and just do the athletic director job full-time. I'm stepping away from high school coaching. I'm working on a couple of different opportunities right now to do some consulting with some college programs where I would go and watch practices, watch games, do some evaluation of what they're doing. And provide some feedback to some coaches. So I've had a couple of conversations with some college coaches that have an interest in my services, and so that kind of gives me an opportunity to keep my hand in basketball a little bit.
That is great because you get to see keep those relationships.
Scratch
right?
that itch.
That's part of the reason why we do what we do. Yeah, you do, and I think you've proven, obviously you got a little bit of an eye for talent, so you know what they're looking for. So. That's congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations are in order for sure. Coach, why don't you take us through kind of the history of Pat Donnelly, the kid, the player, how you got into coaching, some of the places you've stopped, and how you got, from Cleveland to Detroit to be, arguably one of the best coaches in the state. Get us to Pat Donnelly today.
Well, I really developed a passion for basketball in middle school. Went on to play high school basketball at a suburban high school on the west side of Cleveland. Had a decent high school career. Went on to play at a small NAIA school outside of Pittsburgh called St. Vincent College. And while there, the assistant coach at the time was a gentleman by the name of Tom Ackerman. Um, Developed a good relationship with him. When I got out of school, he got a head coaching job. Um, he first started at the University of Pittsburgh at Bradford, and then moved to Mansfield University, a Division II in North Central Pennsylvania. At that time, I was just out of school, and I was helping out at St. Edward High School in Lakewood, who has a very strong basketball program there. Now coached by a guy that I coached when I was there. Um, but we had a 6'8" kid that got injured during his right at the beginning of his senior year. I think he was a very recruitable athlete. He broke his wrist in a scrimmage and didn't play his entire senior year. So I was calling around some different coaches, and I called Tom at a Division II school and said, "Hey, we got this kid. I think he's a Division I caliber player, but he's just overlooked because he didn't play." So this kid ended up signing with Mansfield University in Pennsylvania, and then Tom said to me, "Hey, what would you think about coming over here and working as an assistant?" So I moved out to Mansfield. I was there for 3 years. Um, had a great experience there. Then moved to the University of Akron. Was an assistant there, and then Tom called me back and said, "I'd like to see you come back here and be the associate head coach." And I kind of really enjoyed my experience working there. Went back to Mansfield for 3 more years, and then I had the opportunity to be a head coach at a Division III school in upstate New York. So I took that job, and I was at Elmira College in upstate New York for 7 years as the head coach. Uh, as you know, at small colleges, you wear multiple hats. I was an assistant to the vice president for a number of years. I was the sports information director. I taught some activity classes. It was a lot, and I remember my wife coming in and saying, "Hey, I've got 2 young children. Um, you're spending a lot of time running all over the country recruiting kids and watching kids play, and you're not spending a whole lot of time watching your own kids." Um, so I made the decision then to kind of step out of coaching, and I moved to Detroit to work for my uncle and cousin who owned a business in Warren. It was interesting. They own a sign company, Metro Detroit Signs. I'm going to give a shameless plug there.
There you go.
But I remember talking to my uncle, and he said, "Hey, we need somebody to come in and help run our manufacturing." And I said, "John, I don't know anything about manufacturing signs." And he said, "We have people that can manufacture signs. We just need someone to manage the people, and that's what you've been doing for all these years in coaching." Um, so I moved out here, and my first year back, I coached my son's third grade rec team in Troy. Uh, which was an experience. Going from a college
Yeah.
head coach to a third grade rec team, where getting them into a layup line was quite an accomplishment. We had a lot of fun, but I said to my wife, I'm just too competitive. I need to get into a different environment. So I took the Grosse Pointe North job, coached there for 2 years, and then the UD job opened up. Uh, had an uncle that had 2 sons that went here, and he called me and he said, "You got to go after this job. This would be a great opportunity." And I knew a little bit about Jesuit education. My dad and my brother were graduates of St. Ignatius in Cleveland, a Jesuit school. Um, so I interviewed and applied and got the job here. And I'll tell you, if you'd told me in 2008 that I would be 17 years at U of D Jesuit, I would have told you were crazy. Uh, but it's been a phenomenal experience working with great people, great student athletes. We've had success, and I give that all the credit to the people that have supported the program and the students that have come through here, and certainly the coaches that I've worked with. Um, and it's been great, and I can't tell you how much I learned as a coach coaching in this league against some really talented some of the other coaches that have coached against here. So it's been a wonderful experience, and I wouldn't have traded it for anything.
That's a great story. I did not know that about you. That you coached third grade. I didn't know that. That's my takeaway.
That's
Yeah.
what you take. You skipped everything else. You skipped the college.
Yeah.
See,
I did not know you coached third grade. Yeah.
Pat, do you see what I'm
Yeah.
working with now? You thought a layup line was tough. Look what I'm working with.
You mentioned, I know Mike's got another follow-up for you, but you talked mentioned a lot of names, and I hit it on it early. This great sport of ours, basketball, I coached and refed and played and all it, the relationships, right, is significant reason why we do it. And I remember, a couple of years ago when my dad passed away, and here we are in the basketball community. And one of the first games after my dad passed away, I was reffing your game out at Orchard Lake St. The game that we had to postpone to the following Saturday. Do you remember that?
I do.
Because of the slippery floor. But I think it's your assistant or one of your guys on staff, Scully.
It's the scorekeeper.
Yeah. Came up to me prior to the game with his condolences. Knew somebody or knew my dad's name because of this bond that this game gives us. I don't take it for granted. I don't. I do not take it for granted.
He was a Philly guy, if I remember. He was a Philly guy and knew Dad from his time at West Catholic. Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't know him, but yeah.
Hugh and I had that conversation last night while I was working the lacrosse game. Hugh was there.
Really?
We were talking about your father, and he was at West Catholic, and Hugh was at St. Joe's Prep.
St. Joe's Prep.
And the backcourt, I guess he said your father was the sixth man on that team, and that backcourt was loaded.
Yeah.
Jimmy Lynam and
Herb McGee.
And, Jimmy Boyle and Herb McGee. I know Herb
yeah.
McGee from coaching at Division II in Pennsylvania. He was at Philly Textile.
Philly
Textile.
Yeah. So make sure you tell Scully I said thank you.
Both of us
will do.
Thank you.
Yeah. So go ahead, Mike. Sorry, I know you got to follow up.
No, just real quick, Pat. Who are some of the guys in your coaching career that have kind of helped you? We've all got guys when we were young coaches or just getting into this game and the coaching side that kind of either inspired us or mentored us. Is there a particular guy or two that in your coaching life has meant a lot to you?
Well, my high school coach was very influential. His name was Frank Topoli. He's passed now. His nickname was Babe, but he was a real technician. Really enjoyed playing for him. I learned a ton from him in high school. When I really realized that how much I learned from him is when I went to college, and I just felt like the preparation he gave me allowed me to transition to college much easier in terms of understanding the game and the terminology and how a college program is run. So that he was very influential. Tom Ackerman, who I worked for 6 years at the collegiate level, still is a big mentor of mine. I speak to him on a regular basis. His son actually worked for me for a little bit. Pat Ackerman. He played at Penn State and then finished his career at UD Mercy. And then I'll be honest with you. Some of the guys that I coached against here in the Catholic League, Greg Essler and Bill Dyer. Those guys. I missed them when they left. I really missed having them around because the preparation you had to put together to play against those guys, and it was very competitive games, and we all wanted to beat each other's brains in, but when it was all said and done, I think we had good relationships that we could communicate with each other. They really taught me a lot just in how we competed with each other. And I'll tell you that the other guy that I think has been very helpful to me over the years, and he continues to be, is Tom Izzo. I got to know him pretty well. My son's on his staff now, and I really have enjoyed the relationship with him. And he's always been helpful. If I ever needed anything, I'd go watch a lot of their practices and games, and get some feedback from him on occasion. So those are the guys that have really influenced me.
That's awesome. Because Michael probably won't say this, but one of the people that impacted me was my high school coach, Dave Jackson, who has passed. But Michael probably has a different story. It's probably his middle school coach.
It was not my high school coach.
I was his high school coach.
He was not my high school coach. Did not impact me at all. Matter of fact, I got into coaching because I wanted to have a different impact than my high school coach had.
But with regards to your coaching, people that helped you along the way in coaching, because I'm on the dark side now, as my family likes to say, I do officiating. Give me your perspective. What do you think overall your tenure? I know there's going to be different games and you're going to have different situations about the job officiating, the officiating duties, and what was your relationship with the officials? Did you, when you saw someone, or do you make adjustments based on officiating? Tell me a little bit about what your thoughts are on basketball officiating.
Yeah, I think sometimes you get to know some of the officials, right? And you understand how they're going to call the game, and their personalities. I think that was the big thing. Who you could talk to, how you could talk to them. There are some guys that had maybe a little shorter fuse, so you had to be careful about what you said. There are others that you had it. My biggest thing with officials is, and I'm gonna share my secret here. I really enjoy the guys that I can communicate with.
Yeah, no
Right.
doubt.
Those are the ones that I enjoyed working with. There were some guys over my tenure in the long time I've been coaching that you rubbed me the wrong way because you'd say something to them and you wouldn't get a response, or they just turn their head and walk away and wouldn't communicate with you. Um,
It's what we
those
call
are the
big
ones that
time
I
in it.
usually would
That's
have.
what we call
Would,
big time in us, Pat.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, those are the ones that I'd have an issue with, and I might get a little red faced and screaming at. But I always joke with guys that officiating's hard. Look, I'm the first to admit it. Whatever call you make, somebody's not happy with it, whether it was the best call or not. Um, I always joked with officials and said that's what I was going to be when I was done coaching, because in all my years I've never gotten a call wrong. Uh, but it's I think it's a very difficult job. But my big thing is, I think if coaches and officials can communicate, I like the guys that if I got a little heated, they walk over to me and say, "Hey, Pat, don't scream, just talk to me." And then that would be the best way to go about it. And I think I appreciated those officials that had that mentality and that approach to the game.
Yeah, I concur. And when we attend camps as officials, that is one of the bullet points, right? Let's communicate, with a coach. At the end of the day, you can then say, "Well, I screwed it up," right?
Yeah,
We
yeah.
all are human, and we move on to the next play. But we talk about that, and it's not. Sometimes it's easier said than done, because,
Yeah.
like you said, you blow a whistle, half the gym's pissed at you,
That's right.
right?
So,
So
and I'll tell you, as a coach, and Pat can probably attest to this too. Like I get after a referee, and if a ref comes up to me and says, "I may have missed it," I have no response for that. Like,
Right.
okay, great. We're
Right.
admitting that we're not perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not. I may have missed it. Let's move on.
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
That's right. Again, we teach it. We try to do it in the clinics. Let's communicate with the people. So with the coaches. Okay. So sticking with some of the officiating and rules and so forth, as you stepped away from actually coaching, what about these new potential rules that are getting some national and some local, whether it be a shot clock or tightening things up? Any input or thought on, let's just say, the shot clock?
yeah. I'm a fan of shot clock. Um, I've lost games because there was no shot clock. Um, but at the same time, some of the argument that I hear about shot clock is it takes the coaching out of the game, and I think it's just the opposite. I think when you have a shot clock, you have to be extremely prepared. You have to really understand situational basketball. So I think it would benefit the game. It would speed the game up. I do think also some of the argument of, oh, it costs too much. The one thing that I heard that I think is could be a valid argument is from an official who said, "Look, it's not as easy. Running a shot clock isn't as easy as pushing a button, on and off. There are some technical things that go into running a shot clock appropriately, and I think that could be the challenge is of finding somebody that could do that and do it well, especially for the number of games that we play. I don't think cost is a real factor. Last time I heard, there was an overwhelming number of coaches that wanted the shot clock, but an overwhelming number of ads that didn't.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's
and I think that had to do with implementing that, getting somebody to run the clock, getting more game personnel, putting the shot clocks in, which I think has gotten less expensive with the wireless options. You don't have to get into
Yeah.
all sorts of hardware. But I would like to see a shot clock implemented. There are some rules, not necessarily basketball rules, but just rules within the state of Michigan that I think would benefit our state from a basketball standpoint. They allowed us to play teams from outside of the state now and outside of the contiguous states. I'd like to see us be able to travel a little bit more.
Yeah, because that
And
rule right now, Pat, is you can play them, but they have to be here in the state of Michigan, those games, correct?
right, or in a contiguous state. I actually had an interesting story this past year. I have a guy that I used to coach in college as a high school coach in Buffalo, and I said, oh, they're within 300 miles. I scheduled 2 games in the early January in Buffalo against St. Joe's and against Niagara Falls, two of the better Western New York teams. I was going to go out and scrimmage my old players team the night before those games. It was going to be a good trip for our guys too. And then I talked to the MHSA, and they said you can't go there. We don't have the 300-mile rule anymore. It has to be a contiguous state. And I said, well, Illinois is not a contiguous state, but you allow us to play in Chicago and play in Illinois. And they said, well, the lake. And I said, well, that's a bad argument for a guy
That is a
from
bad
Cleveland
argument.
because I know full well what Lake Erie does when it goes from Michigan to Buffalo. So their response was, well, there are 1,600 teams you can play in those other states. Stick to those. But there are some of those things that are a little frustrating. But from pure basketball standpoint, I think the shot clock is the biggest thing.
Yeah, I want to touch on that. Can I?
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
I'm sorry, Mike. Just on the shot clock, I guess I'm gonna go on record here, whatever that's worth on the World Wide Web. It's got to be an official. From an official standpoint, we have a hard enough time with clocks operating on a regular basis when a volunteer, you guys at UAD might have the staff or whatnot, but there's a lot of other facilities that the clock is never run. The main clock is never run properly. How are we going to introduce a shot clock to a parent? Right, basically, is what it comes down to.
Well,
so,
and I think from
that's
that
my
level,
argument
though,
against.
From that level, though, I think there could be some sort of training from the MHSA as well, that somebody would have to be certified and trained to run the shot clock through the MHSA, not necessarily an actual game official, not necessarily a game official. The other thing that's interesting to me is I was on the BCAM committee regarding the shot clock, and we submitted a ton of data to the MHSA in regards to the coaches, points per possession, times per possession throughout the season. And the MHSA came back 2 years ago, and I don't know, Pat, if you remember this, and they came out with their reasoning was that at the boys and girls Final Four, and they listed out the average time of possession and that it didn't warrant. Well, to me, that data is, the 4 best teams in every division, they're probably a little more efficient than most teams in the state you're playing on a nightly basis.
Yeah, concur. I agree.
Yeah. I can tell you one experience. We played in the state championship in 2019, and we had a 1-point lead with 1:39 left, and Ypsilanti Lincoln held the ball for the final 1:39 and won on a buzzer beater. So boy, I wish there was a shot clock.
Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah.
Just train them and pay them. That's all.
Yeah.
That's it.
So one of the other rules that, I mean, at least me personally has not been a fan of, that came in a couple of years ago, was the bonus structure changing on free throws. I'm interested to see what your take is on that, Pat. Instead of going to the traditional second half, per half 7 fouls, double bonus at 10 to the 5 in the 2 shots, I just thought it took some of the late game situational stuff that we've always worked on out of it.
I would agree. I think it did take that late game stuff out. I do like the 5 fouls per quarter. I'm not sure how, everybody said that the reason they did that was to speed up the game, that you wouldn't have all those intentional fouls to get to one-on-one situation late in games. I'm not sure that maybe it did speed it up. I can't say that I recognized a big difference. But I think not having the one-on-one certainly changed the philosophy of how you handled end of game situations. But I still think people foul because they're, not everybody has 90% free throw shooters, but the 2-shot foul definitely makes a difference. I can't
Yeah,
say I was
I
a
say that
coach.
as a
I
guy
don't
who's
know how much
coached the
it
majority of
affected.
his games trying to come from behind. So the 1-on-1 was always
Yeah,
good.
Yeah.
right.
Right.
Right. I've seen your
That's
team.
it.
I've seen
That's
your teams. I know.
Yeah. Go ahead,
All
Mike.
right. So yeah. Um, so the new buzzword, kind of, Pat, in sports and in culture is, or I mean, in sports and in general, is culture, right? Like building culture. Everybody, every business, every program at every level is talking about building culture. Now, I say this as a coach myself. Jim and I have talked about this off of this podcast, how we've admired from afar the culture that you've built at UAD Jesuit. You've got elite athletes, elite basketball players who let you coach them extremely hard, and you're very demanding on them. That kind of relationship of them responding to that doesn't come without a lot of behind the scenes cultural work. So, talk just a little bit about how you get those kids bought into being coached hard, being held accountable, and how that benefits them in the long run personally.
Well, I kind of take the same approach that my high school coach took with me and with our teams, and it's preparation. And I'm very honest with families as they come here and they enter our program, that you are going to be coached hard. I really feel like every kid in our program has the ambition to play at the collegiate level. And so we treat our program very much like a college level program. We practice in a very similar way. We have the same type of accountability. We use a lot of the same terminology. My goal is to prepare those young men, if they have those aspirations, to move on and compete at the next level. And I've said this before, and I really do get a lot of um, I really enjoy hearing this, is when guys from this program go on to play in college, and I get a call from that coach, and they say, "Hey, this kid's well prepared. He knows what we're doing, and how we're guarding ball screens, and how we're guarding down screens and back screens, and you can tell that he's been coached in these ways and in these situations." And that's kind of what we really stress is we're going to coach you hard. We're going to ask things of you. We're going to demand things of you, both on the court, in the classroom. Um, how you act socially, things that will impact your ability to go on and play. Um, and I think they buy into that. It's funny. I've been known to be kind of short. I don't have a lot of interaction with our parents. Um, my son played for me, and I had the same parent meeting every year. And my wife came his junior year to the meeting, and we go through the meeting. I have the same spiel I've always had, and I tell him, like, look, we can talk about academics, we can talk about social life, we can talk about this, but when we start talking about basketball, that's a conversation ender. Um, I have a we kind I kind of believe in the self accountability and self advocacy. So I say, hey, you guys come to me if a player has an issue. I've got an open door policy. We'll fix it. Between me and the player, before the parents have to get involved. And then if it goes beyond that, we can get with the AD. We can get with the principal.
Yeah.
It goes. 9.9% of the time, it never gets to that. But I remember coming home from that meeting, and my wife said to me, "How do you think that meeting went?" And I said, "Well, I think it went well. It's the same meeting we have every year." And she kind of looked at me with this blank stare, and she goes, "I got to be honest with you. You're kind of an ass." And I said, I never have any issues. I'm
Yeah.
sure. I'm sure that. But I think that's preparation too, because when those kids go on and they go play whatever level they play, that's preparation for the parents. The parents aren't going to have carte blanche to call their college coach and say, "Hey, my son should be playing
Good
more.
point.
My son should be getting the ball more, get more shots." It's not going to happen. Or if it does happen, they're not going to be long lived at that program. Um, I think that's kind of we build that on just that accountability and that preparation, and I think that leads to a lot of success and how hard those kids have to work to attain their goals of playing at the next level.
Yeah.
So
Kudos
yeah,
to
Nick.
just to follow up on that, Mike. I'm sorry, cutting off. Kudos to you because it translates from an official standpoint. I can never remember any issue with any of your kids. I mean, even introducing themselves during warm up lines. Thank you for being here. I mean, kudos to you. Kudos to the culture that you built there. I don't know if you even talk about that with your players, but it's just a byproduct of what that meeting is because it is a pleasure to officiate your kids,
Well,
actually.
thank you, Jim. One of the things that we talk about is you're on display. My high school coach used to say, he said, think about it. If you're playing football, you've got equipment on, you've got helmets on. You're playing hockey, you got equipment on, you got helmets on. In basketball, you're basically running out there in your underwear. So everybody knows who you are, and how you act on the court is also something. I talk about that a lot with our guys. Like, those are the things that get you crossed off the recruiting list.
Mm-hmm.
It's not your talent. It's how you interact with your teammates, how you interact with officials, how you accept coaching, how you accept getting pulled off the court. Yeah, what do you act like on the bench? Those if you've got an attitude and you're gonna whine and complain to the official every time. There are a lot of college coaches. They'll say, "Yeah, we don't want to deal with that," and they'll cross you off the list. So we
Right.
talk about that a lot.
Good.
So
Good for you.
in
Kudos.
terms of that, the amount of collegiate players you've had over your tenure at UAD Jesuit, you've had elite point guard play during your tenure there. Most recently with Leroy Blyden this past year, who was one of the most electric players in the state. Sonny Wilson before that, and the list goes on and on. And obviously, you had the opportunity to coach one of the best players in the state of Michigan of all time, Cassius Winston. Now, I'm not going to put you on the spot and pick a favorite, Pat. I wouldn't do that to another coach. But talk to me about the guard play in your program and just some of the development of that elite position, because we know as coaches that if you have good guard play, you can compete, right? And if your point guard is your best player and your best teammate, you've got a really good chance for success.
Yeah. I mean, I give those guys a ton of credit, and you're right. We've been absolutely blessed with the point guards and the guards that have come through here. A lot of players that have come through here, but these guys work at their game. They aspire to be great players themselves. So I can't take all the credit. I like to think though that what we do to teach them how to play that position in our program will allow them to play that position beyond high school. It's a lot more. It's changed a little bit. The point guard position used to be we need passers, we need defenders, we need now it's a lot more scoring. Um, but there's still that passing and defense and leadership and being that extension of the coach on the floor is so important. Even with Cassius, I mean, Cassius was a phenomenal player. I don't know if I've seen a better passer in my career than he was. Um, but I remember he wasn't a great defender. We would hide him on the other team's worst player. And his freshman year at Michigan State, there were two things. I remember getting a call from Coach Izzo, and I answered the phone. I said, "Hey, Coach," and he called me a name that I won't repeat. And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "You never made this kid play defense." And I
Defense.
said, I said, "I didn't have to. I needed him at the
Right.
offensive end. I could hide him on the bad guys. You don't have bad guys to hide him
Uh-huh.
on, So, but the two things that prevented him from starting as a freshman at Michigan State were defense, which he had to learn. He was never a great athlete. He was a good athlete, and Coach Izzo really valued the communication piece. being vocal and being a rah kind of guy. And he called him Casual Cassius. And Cassius did a lot of leading by example, but Coach Izzo wanted him to speak up more, and that was something that he had to develop in his freshman year in college. That he wanted him more vocal, and I didn't necessarily need that, but
Yeah.
that was something that he needed to do to become the player that he was. And I think we kind of push everything here to try to make sure that preparation to play that position they're getting that so they can be successful at the next level.
Awesome. Before you move on, all right, Mike, what's that process for you when you got these kids that are being recruited? It just came to mind. I mean, you mentioned Coach Izzo, but you've got a lot of other really talented players that a lot of coaches got to. Is that a fun process for you as a coach? Is it um,
Cumbersome
is it
undertaking?
good?
Yeah.
Cumbersome. It's another challenge for you because these kids are getting recruited. I just thought of that, and I'm thinking I've never had to experience all these big time coaches trying to get the kids. So what's that like?
Yeah, I enjoy the process. I enjoy communicating with the other coaches. I enjoy having them into the gym and meeting with our guys and seeing our guys. I actually use a lot of those coaches to provide feedback to me on how I'm running my program. But at the same time, that's what I'm trying to do is push these guys, our players, to be recruited if they want to be recruited and what levels. I think one of the things that's the most difficult is being really honest and having a good eye for where you think they fit. Every kid wants to come in and they all want to play at Michigan or Michigan State or UCLA or Duke, right? But they're not at that level, and it's hard for them to accept. But I think it's important for me to be really honest with them, where I think they can play, and honest with the college coaches. If I call John Shire at Duke and say, "Hey, John, I got a guy here. You need to come look at him," and he comes and looks at him and thinks, there's no way that kid can play at Duke, right? Well, the next time I do have a kid that can play at Duke, and I call him, he's not coming, right? So I have to explain that to the players. Like, look, I can't be pushing you to these programs if you can't play there. So I think I have to have a good understanding where they can play. I think I have to be honest with the college coaches, but I also have to be a really good communicator to make sure that I'm communicating to those college coaches how our guys can benefit their program. Certainly, they do the evaluation. They determine whether or not they'll get a scholarship offer or whether or not they'll offer them a roster spot. But I think I enjoyed the process, and I've created some good relationships with a number of coaches in that way. Um, but it can be a little stressful too. I mean, we have a kid this year who's a really good player, and this whole, and I'm going to get into something here. This whole transfer portal, NIL, it's chaos, and I've had a number of coaches that I've had conversations with that said we're not going to recruit high school kids because
Yeah.
we can go in the portal and grab a kid with 2 or 3 years experience.
Yeah. Get a
So
grown
I had a
man.
kid this year who was a college player all day long and a scholarship player all day long, and he's going to a junior college in Kansas because the scholarship opportunities weren't there. And I've had multiple guys, college
Yeah.
head coaches, call me and say we'll be all over him after a year at
Yeah.
college. And I was like,
Is
well,
he
that's great. I'm happy for you, but his parents are looking at me like, why are you helping me get this kid a scholarship?
is he going to
Right?
Yeah.
Garden City, Pat?
He is. Yeah.
So,
Which,
small story, Catholic League ties again here. Jack
yeah.
Alaska, the assistant coach there,
Yeah.
is a former player of mine.
Jack, that's
Yeah.
right.
So Jack called me, and I didn't know Jack, right? But he called me, and then he started saying, I played for Coach McAndrews at Mooney.
Click,
And so
click.
I apologized, but Jack was great, and I'll tell you, Jack will do well in this business because he's persistent. He was very good at communicating with me. He was very good at communicating with Xavier and his family. So Jack's got a good career ahead of him.
That's awesome story. And again, back to the sport. It's awesome. And the fact that you can say, I'm going to call John Shire. That's pretty cool about the process too. Go ahead, Mike.
So along those lines, the basketball is clearly a family affair in the Donnelly family. Both your children have gotten involved in the game at the Division I level. Your daughter Claire is the director of basketball operations for the University of Nevada men's program, and your son Colin is the on staff and the video coordinator for Michigan State men's basketball. That takes me to two questions. First, are you glad that both your kids have followed their dad's path into coaching? And two, how hard is it for you as a parent to watch the teams your kids are now coaching and helping develop?
Yeah, I didn't push it. Number one, it's kind of funny that they both ended up. I knew Colin would. I remember the story. Colin came in third grade, and it was career day at the school, and he comes down in khaki pants and a sport coat and a tie. And I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Career day at school." I said, "Well, what are you going to be?" And he said, "I want to be a college basketball coach, and when I'm finished, I want to broadcast games for ESPN." And what's funny is he ended up going to Michigan State to be a manager, because I told him, you can go to a really small school and maybe play somewhere, but if you want to get into coaching, it's all about relationships and networking. I think being a manager in a big program would be a great opportunity. So he was looking at Marquette, he was looking at Michigan State, Iowa State with Fred Hoiberg, Michigan. He ended up going to Michigan State, which surprised me a little bit. I thought he was going to go to Marquette, but got into broadcast journalism, and then went directly into coaching. So he's kind of followed that since third grade, that's what his plan was. Claire, if you saw Claire shoot a basketball, and plenty of people have, they want to know your dad was a high school coach. And she didn't play any basketball. She was a gymnast her whole life. She got involved in other sports in high school. She played lacrosse. She was a swimmer. Um, she got involved in a lot of different things, but then went to work at Michigan State in the basketball office and really fell in love with the operations side of basketball. That's how she ended up at Nevada working for Steve Alford. But she doesn't know whether a basketball is pumped up her stuff. So good thing she's doing more.
Write that one down.
Yeah.
She's doing more all the administrative stuff for the team travel. She's involved in NIL stuff. She's really getting a great education. She got a great education at Michigan State working for Coach Izzo, and now even more working for Coach Alford. So it's been great for the kids. Following them, I watch all their games. It's not easy. Those West Coast games that tip off at 10 o'clock. I would have a game, get home from the game, and turn on the Mountain West app and watch those games. And my wife would hear me yelling at the TV, and she would say, "Pat, those are not your teams." And I was like, "I know, but it's just frustrating."
It is.
But I really enjoy following that. And that's something that I'm looking forward to, not coaching now, and I'll be able to follow their careers a little bit closer now, not having basketball games myself. So looking forward to that.
Congrats.
Yeah, congratulations. And maybe down the line there is head coach Colin Donnelly and assistant coach Pat Donnelly somewhere at the collegiate level.
Yeah.
Pat, I want to thank you for coming on and being our first guest. It was outstanding. All the stuff that you've done for the past 17 years at U of D Jesuit has been the benchmark for those of us that coach in the Catholic League. How you've handled yourself with class and humility. I appreciate your friendship that I've gotten to know you throughout coaching. And Jim and I have often talked from the officiating side. He already referenced it earlier, how well your program represented themselves over the years. So for you to be the first guest on Two Shots in the Ball podcast is special for us. So I want to thank you for your time and sharing your story with us. And we wish you all the best and continued success in your new role as full-time AD at UD Jesuit.
I appreciate the opportunity, and it's great seeing you both, and we'll certainly see a lot more of you as you come through the league.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you guys. Good
All right,
seeing
take
you.
care.
All
All right,
right.
you too. Bye-bye.
We want to clean in the paint. We're going to call hand checking and body checking, and sportsmanship is an absolute must. Okay.
He lets it fly.